Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 9th, 2024. Well, they're continuing the same idiocy, although this time it appears as though they're even more idiotic than before. I'm talking about the NATO Brain Trust, which met again over the weekend in Ramstein, Germany, to map out the next phase of the war against Russia and Ukraine. The pledges were that they'll stand with Ukraine to the end. This from Lloyd Austin, this from the British representative. And this is what they've been saying from the beginning, that it was at the Ramstein first meeting that Austin said the purpose of this operation in Ukraine is to weaken Russia. And he reiterated that. And he and others went through a litany of proof that they can win, the Kursk incursion, that Russia is running out of weapons. I mean, this is probably the 10th meeting where they've said that. But what was added to this was a new wrinkle from Chancellor Scholz, the German chancellor, whose ratings in part of the country, poll ratings, are now down to single digits. What Scholz said is that Germany is now going to deploy the funds to procure new air defense capabilities. And he said he would work together with the European allies to build a kind of European Iron Dome, modeled on the air defense system of Israel. Now, this led to questioning of the sanity of the NATO leaders. And there's a good reason for it. The Iron Dome works perfectly well against drones, and it does to some extent work against some other missile systems. But in Ukraine, they're not facing drones. They're facing the Iskander and the Kinzhal missiles. And recent events show that these defense systems are completely inadequate, in fact, are useless against these high-speed new Russian missiles. For example, in the attack on Poltava, which had the Iskander is Mach 6, and it devastated Poltava. More interesting was the use of the Iskander, which is Mach 10, against the defenses in Lviv, where the Russians obliterated the NATO headquarters there. Now, this led to general questioning, as I said, of Scholz's sanity. Probably most interesting is that of the military and strategic expert Gilbert Doctorow, who's usually somewhat understated in his assessment of these things. But Doctorow said that the fact that Scholz and Pistorius, the defense minister, are pushing this shows that they are, quote, damned fools. Now, he referred to, as I said, the attack on Poltava with the Iskander, and then the one on Lviv with the Kinzhal missile. And what he said is that this just adds to his view of the insanity of Scholz, due to Scholz's submission to Joe Biden, to accepting the idea of long-range nuclear-capable missiles to be stationed in Germany, to be delivered to Germany by 2026. And what Doctorow said is that this will do nothing but paint a, quote, very big bullseye on Germany, unquote. Now, this idea that Biden could tell Scholz, you're going to take these missiles, and Scholz can just accept it without a debate in the Bundestag, without discussing it with other European leaders, because all of Europe will be affected if Germany ends up the target of an attack by Russia because of accepting these missiles. And what's the whole idea behind having these missiles? The idea that Russia is about to invade Eastern Europe and then Western Europe. If Ukraine falls, the next will be Poland, and then after that will be Germany. This is the old domino theory. But this is based on a misreading of the situation in the 1950s and 60s. There's no indication or evidence of any sort that Putin has a design set on conquering Germany. This was created as a narrative by people such as Keir Giles, the so-called expert of Chatham House, who says that the Russians never tell you the truth. They're intending to reconquer Europe, reestablish the Soviet Empire, and more. And what's the evidence? Well, there is no evidence. They say that Putin once said the great tragedy was the collapse of the Warsaw Pact. Well, that doesn't mean that he's therefore going to try to resurrect it. But it's this kind of foolish thinking that leads to the statement that an iron dome for Europe will succeed. Now, I think it's worth calling your attention to the discussion on the Zoom call of the International Peace Coalition last Friday. And I'm going to include a link to that. This was an extraordinary discussion. It included people such as Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, the former Chief of Staff of Colin Powell. It included Dr. Ted Postel, one of the leading experts in nuclear weapons and nuclear war from MIT, who had years of experience, who described how this agreement that was reached, or this new doctrine that was adopted by Biden, which calls for the U.S. to be prepared for simultaneous nuclear war against Russia, China, and North Korea. Postel shows how this is based on the idea that the U.S. can fight and win a nuclear war, which he says is lunatic. More importantly, if Russia knows that's what we're planning, that that's what the West is preparing for, then what's to hold back Russia from launching a preemptive strike? There's also former Ambassador Jack Matlock, who is Reagan's ambassador to the Soviet Union, who was involved in the discussion, and Helga Zeppler-Roush. And the discussion is quite extraordinary and well worth listening to. Now, one of the things Wilkerson talked about is how after 9/11, and we're coming up on the anniversary of 9/11, that 9/11 was used as an excuse to expand the security state. So I would encourage you to listen to the discussion, watch the discussion, and then also there was another discussion of this meeting that I was involved in on the Manhattan Project on Saturday. I'll send a link to that also, because it's crucial that you out there are getting the best insight into what the danger is and how to counteract it. So that's my report for today. There's going to be a lot more to come because the situation continues to show the unhinged nature of the arrogant delusions of the Western establishment.